Hello, friends, and welcome back. It is 6 days with 5 paintings. I know it looks like I'm getting behind, but I'm not worried. I got several things going on the go. We're going to make it. Don't you worry about it. 30 paintings in 30 days. Now, here we've got my intuitive painting. For those of you that don't quite understand what I mean by intuitive, it's I get into a mood or a feeling often after a meditation, or I just feel like I need to express something. And even if it's just nothing very specific, just in this case, what I wanted to express was the creative spirit. That was it. That's all I had planned. And I start with a heart. And I'm going to leave it to you to take a look and see if you can see where the heart was drawn. But here you can see I've done the drawing and I'm now blocking it in. Now I am using acrylic paint on a wood palette. I don't know how this little hand, this little chubby, child fist ended up in the picture, but it did. And that's the truth about how I do these intuitive drawings. I don't control what sort of emerges to me. Okay? It sort of reminds me of how sculptors say, I didn't plan or create the sculpture, it just sort of came from the rock. And that's kind of how I feel about these drawings. I start with a shape and I start with sort of dividing the picture, and lo and behold, it ends up something that was in line with what I was going for. So whether you call that channeled, through spirit or something divine, or whether you think that's from the field or you think that's just from my subconscious, I don't necessarily separate them, to be quite honest. So that's where that's coming from. So there is a lot going on in this picture. There is a hand, there is a swan, there is sort of a paisley design in there or a lace pattern. There is a peacock feather. There is a couple of fingers stretching out from what appears to be a flashlight or a light, like a stage light, which is also a goblet. And it all started from a heart. And I always use a heart to start these intuitive drawings because for me, that is the seat of the soul, the creative passion is that heart. So I always like to try to create and link my heart sense to my head. And that's actually based in a science called heart math, where the heart and the brain, when you truly get into a coherent understanding and linking of the two, work the best. And I truly think that when you're emotionally aligned with your thinking, I don't think you're unstoppable, in my opinion, right? So that's kind of how I design my personal reality, right? Is I control my thinking by a lot of how I feel about a situation and reflect on that, and that becomes my personal reality, making my personality. It's Yeah, if you ever know of Joe Dispenza, that's where I get that from. So you can see here, I've been blocking in the picture, trying to get those colors. It's never a simple or an easy thing. My desk has been a little bit crowded, so you can tell because I've got so many things that have been on the go. And what you can't see is all the other stuff that I cannot really say are paintings, but I've had to work on the side, like some drawings and things like that. So yeah, yeah, so we can talk a little bit more about art philosophy. If you have any questions, go ahead, put them down into my comment section below. So this is what I mean by intuitive drawing. I don't know what's going to happen at the end. I just go with it. Now that includes most often my color scheme. So it ends up that I do a little bit of experimenting while I go on the page, But I kind of think that's where we all started, back in the day when we're using our pencil crayons and stuff in school. You just kind of put the pencil crayon down because there was no erasing it afterwards. So that's kind of what happens here. So sometimes there's several layers of paint in a section because I just didn't quite like where it was going. And I will admit there were sections of this drawing that as I painted, realized it wasn't working. I didn't like it. I left it alone for a night, came back to it, and yeah, it wasn't what it was meant to be. It had something else happen to it. So I'm kind of glad for those happy little accidents, to be quite honest. So here we are. I'm just blocking in the color, pretty basic. Okay, here we are. We've gotten some of the cherries down. We're now blocking in that light slash goblet that's coming, and water is coming from the goblet, not just light. And for me, water and light are important symbols of life force, blood. Um, you know, what creates life, for example, what brings us life, right? The light being the bringer of spirituality and light, what we look towards, what we are attracted to, what I think ultimately our spirit or our soul is in a sense made of, right? Is that energy force. And then the water sort of represents the three-dimensional. So quite often those aspects will be in my paintings. Often I also have the Trinity, which I represent as a bird for the Holy Spirit. Fire or energy often shows up as God the Father, and you know, in keeping with my Catholic tradition, water, of course, or fish for Jesus himself. So pretty cool. And if you notice that ding in the background, that's just my partner watching television and being really patient while I try to do the audio for this video. Say hi, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
If it's not the cats, it's the partner. It's the kid. Yeah, so there we go. There is a lot going on there. There's also a lighthouse in there that emerged. And of course, that's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, it might mean something different for everybody, but there's also the stained glass window, and there's buildings, and there's pyramids. And all of this for me was representing the idea of humanity's creative spirit and our ability to make wondrous things. And of course, that is inspired by the ultimate creative force in the universe, God, the universe. So that's where I was kind of going with this. And although the symbols might seem kind of direct, simple, trite, whatever you want to call it, they work. They're universal, and they're just what happened to come through. So, as I said, didn't really plan it. There have been some videos I've done before, and I'll put a link if I can to this one about watching me do an intuitive process. And if you're interested in learning more about how to do an intuitive process, I'd be more than happy to teach you. Just send me a message to bgtcreative@gmail.com. That's BGT for beauty, goodness, truth, creative @gmail.com. Yeah, that's the name of the studio. So here we go. We're just continuing to block in that color. And let's fast forward you a little bit to save some time, shall we? Here you can see I'm almost done. I'm showing it off a little bit. See that I've got those blocked in colors. Things are starting to take form. I'm starting to realize what things are. Because even when I'm drawing, I'm not entirely sure what that shape is supposed to represent until I start blocking in, you know, some of the color. I might have a general idea, but then as I'm painting, of course, new ideas are coming and they're just dropping in it. I don't say no. That's the thing. I have tried to do that. I have tried to resist what I wanted to put down, and it's funny because the more I resist putting down the shell and, you know, or the shape, you know, the circle, the ball, the heart, the tent, whatever, the more I resist putting that down, the more that thought seems to persist. So to me, that's a sign, just go with it. Just put it down and move. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right here. Okay, I've blocked it all in. This is the point at which I usually get really, really frustrated by something because it's not exactly as I wanted it to go. And if you notice at the very bottom part where it sort of looks like there's a little bit of red coral, it's just to the right of that leaf that I'm working on there. That whole area got reworked. So kind of if you pay attention to that, you see that I was struggling with that, and I knew the coral was supposed to be there, but there was something else. There's a sprout that I think was coming, and yeah, you'll see as we kind of move forward that definitely changed. When the detail starts to get in, I think you start to see it really pull together. But yeah, so far so good. But at this point, it's getting to the point where I've had to put it away and come back and put it away and come back just because I knew that there was that struggle there. And when I get into that struggle instead of continuing to work, yeah, that's a bad idea. That's when I make mistakes. That's when I get frustrated. That's when things start, you know, a project is supposed to take a couple of days turns into a couple of weeks. So I know better than to just keep plugging away and basically ruining it. I just need to stop and move on, right? And that would be Lucas yelling for me to, you know, he needs help. So let's pause this and give you a chance to take a look at some more. Okay, Here we go. This was the finished sort of early stages of just blocking that color. I still hadn't quite figured out what is going on in the bottom. I think this is when I went to bed and I woke up and I went, yes, yes, I know what that's supposed to be. But right now you can sort of see the pyramids are taking shape in the middle there. There's buildings that had this sort of vibe of New York, plus a kind of a Coca-Cola or a pop inspired in there. The peacock feather, the the tulip. Now, that was kind of interesting, that flower. But again, that to me is a godly creation. It's inspirational. What isn't inspirational about flowers? We've got cherries. We've got the goblet, the flashlight, the buildings, a bridge. You can see there up by the stained glass window, those are actually finger shapes. So like the hand of humans, creating all of these things inspired by beauty, which to me represented by the swan. And it all actually started from two heart shapes, and it'll be interesting to see if you can pick out where those very early heart shapes were. They do have a tendency sometimes to get lost, and it's funny because I have to tell you guys, I'm not much of a fan of the traditional heart shape, right? Probably because it's just been so overused, right? It's clip arty. But I have to tell you, there's nothing else that gets my mojo going than starting out just laying out that shape. And that's, again, because I really believe there is something to the heart-mind connection. So anyway, that's where it all works, and you can kind of see where it's coming. But I can't wait to show you where we end up here with the detail, and that's coming up next. Here we are. Okay, now I've pulled out my paint pens. I do not always use these, but when I need a straight line or some fine detail, that's when it's really handy to pull these out. I do have a lot of them, so the color is never really an issue. But what I do is sometimes just lay down the lines of what I want in the paint pen, and then I go back over it with the tone or color of paint. See, I just did it right there, right? Just to get my lines defined and then adding that the true color of the paint that I really want on that. But this is really taken shape. I figured out what to do with that bottom underneath, sort of between the light and the swan there, and it really became earth and the mountain and a mountain range and a sprout in the middle. I mixed the city and the swan and the peacock feather and the stained glass window and the lace and the bridges and the buildings and children and that childlike ability to just want to create without judgment. I love that. And cherries or apples. The goblet, yeah, I just love how much ended up in this painting and how they really seem random, but they're just not. It just works, and I'm really happy with how this came out. And I'm really happy that I pushed myself to get it done in less. Well, it's taken me from idea to finished. Working with other paintings every day and filming and all that stuff, it's taken me a week. That's not too bad, honestly, for me. Yeah, and I knew I could have gone on and spent a ton more time on this. But I know that the point of my 30 days is to just really move and get some ideas out there and really put it down. And if I want to come back to it, if there's something I think it needs more of, well, the paint's never quite dry in this studio, so that's just fine. Anyway, I really hope you've enjoyed this process and that you appreciate the art. If you're interested in this art piece or any more, you can contact me at bgtcreativestudio@gmail.com for more information, or you can go to my website, dawnstyle.ca. That's Dawn, D-A-W-N, style, S-T-Y-L-E. And you can maybe check for this one or other ones there as well. If this one is not up there right away, it will be. Just be patient. Give me a couple of days. And yeah, otherwise, you can always email me and I will get back to you as soon as I can. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. If you liked this, subscribe, share, do all that jazz we know that helps channels and stuff grow. That would be very much appreciated. And yeah, stay safe, get out there, paint, and just create. Enjoy this wonderful gift we have as human beings to just make pretty happen. Thanks so much. Have a good night.